moment Australia is the highest contributor per head of carbon emissions of any country, any person in the world. We are the highest per head, and I'm ashamed of that, and we should be doing something positive about it. This model has been constructed to demonstrate to people how we can generate solar electricity even at night. Because everyone says that solar power and wind power have a problem because at night the sun doesn't shine and the wind isn't always operating. But this model shows how that can be overcome.
Must be getting pretty hot up there now. Oh, well.
So the way the model works is the mirrors are focused up onto the heat collector at the top, and that gets quite hot. So even just on a little model like this, it gets very hot. And then the heat from that is stored and used to generate electricity.
The idea is to have a lot of these all around Australia and a lot of wind generators as well. And then at different times you might have a lot of wind power being generated, at other times more solar power in different locations. And so if you spread them around, you average out and you get a really good power supply for almost all the year round.
So if I run through the way it operates, it's this. This tank here is the cool salt tank, and salt is the secret of the way this works, because salt at around about 200 degrees centigrade melts, and it's just like ice and water. It melts, it becomes liquid. That salt is then pumped up into this tank in a real existing system, and in this tank here the concentrated sunlight from all these mirrors heats the salt up to 650 degrees centigrade. The salt then goes down this side and is then stored in a hot salt tank. And the hot salt tank is really well insulated, rather like a thermos flask. It'll only lose 1% of its heat every day, so it's extremely well insulated. Most important is that this tank acts like a battery, but instead of storing electrical energy, it stores heat energy, which it can do much more effectively. And when you need electricity, the hot salt is pumped out through the heat exchanger, which is just a boiler, and that boils water, and the water then drives the little turbine. The water then boils and drives the turbine, and then that generates electricity, which comes back through here to our little town and out into the grid.
However, for about 1% of the time you can have a situation where you run out of solar power and wind power, and so then they have this down here. You'll see there's a biofuel station, so you get a whole lot of agricultural refuse, pile it up there as biomass, and then burn it to that 1% when you can't generate enough electricity from wind power and solar power. So it just fills in the gap.
So what we've done is we've rigged up lights on this thing so that if we're demonstrating at night to people at meetings or things like that, we can show what's happening with the lights. So the cool salt goes up the tower, the hot salt comes down the tower and gets stored in the tank, and then when you want electricity, the hot salt comes out through the heat exchanger, which is just a boiler, and back into the cool salt tank. The heat from the salt then generates steam from water, and the high pressure, high temperature steam drives a turbine, and then the steam comes back through this little arrangement which condenses it back to water, so it recycles through the system. So the salt cycles through it, you don't need extra salt once you've got the system running, and the water recycles through the system as well. So two closed loops. And the purpose of all of that is it generates electricity which comes off to our little town, which you can see over here.
Australia is in a position where we can really, make a stand for the rest of the world, and demonstrate what's possible, and catch up with China and catch up with Spain.
One of the problems that we have in our politicians at the moment is that they're trying to hedge bets between all things. They offer a small incentive for people to put solar power photovoltaic panels on the roof, for example, and then 3 years later they pull the pin on that, so all the people, businesses who've invested fall over. So we get this constant on-off, which is driving everyone nuts. But at the same time that the government offers suggests a carbon tax as a way of controlling emissions, at the same time it's prepared to spend public money on building infrastructure for new coal loading terminals, and it's paid thousands of dollars for police to try and open up coal seam gas, which nobody in the community wants. They're trying to open that up at our expense, when they should be working straight into renewables and abandoning all the carbon emissions.